What's up, guys? Yeah, it's about 7:26 on this Thursday evening. Yeah, I'm doing this because I have the place to myself for just a little bit for right now, and also the fact that I'm off tomorrow, and for the next 6 days, so that's going to be interesting. But anyway, I wanted to come on here because I believe next year, if not later this year, but more importantly next year, Hulu is going to be debuting a revamped, rebooted or softly rebooted or retconned version or take on Steven Spielberg's Animaniacs. Now, in case you guys don't know, Animaniacs was a show that was actually, I guess the name itself was based on the Tiny Toons episode, or inspired by the Tiny Toons episode of the same name. And then they had an episode a little around the same time where they introduced these characters from the black and white era that got over in the modern era. And basically, the ideas just went from there, and from my opinion, from my speculation, went from there, and thus we got Animaniacs. And Animaniacs became a pop culture phenomenon because basically they took the concept of these three characters, these siblings, the Warner siblings, that were originally created in the late 20s, early 30s, and basically centered the show around them because they were obviously too wacky, the premise was basically the Warners were just too wacky and too out of control for normal audiences to understand their shorts. I mean, heck, they did a mockumentary, a mockumentary as they call it, in an episode to kind of tell the origins of how they came to be. But the other thing about Animaniacs is they also had different characters, a variety of characters that became popular in their own right. In fact, one group of characters became so popular they got their own spin-off series, and that was Pinky and the Brain. And they had a spin-off series of that called Pinky, the Brain, and Elmira. And that was a short-term deal they experimented with. But there were other characters that potentially could have gotten their own series as well. You had Slappy Squirrel and her nephew Skippy. You had the Good Feathers. You had Rita and Runt. You had a great variety of characters that every time they came on the screen proved to be more funnier than the previous time you've seen them. They usually seem to take it up a notch. Well, now with the information that Animaniacs is coming back next year, and I talked about this when I first heard about it, when it was first announced, I talked about what I would like to see, and obviously we all want to see some of the original cast come back. And since it's going to be on Hulu, it basically gives, and that being a streaming service, it gives, I guess you could say, the creators, the writers, the staff, if you will, a little bit more freedom, if you will, and I know I just said that, but it gives them a little bit more freedom to explore these characters and put them in situations that they tried to and attempted to in the original run but couldn't fully achieve because of the fact that the original run was part of Fox Kids and then part of the Kids WB, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and so on. So they, as well as syndication, so they were limited in what they could do. Not totally, surprisingly, but there were limitations. And honestly, when you think about some of the characters that they introduced and the potential they had with them, and then you see some of that potential kind of come across more so in a comic book adaptation of the series, then you know that they had the opportunity in front of them. They just could not capitalize on it. But now with Animaniacs coming to Hulu around next year, if not probably sometime at the end of this year, but mostly next year. The question is, how much leeway is this staff going to get? Well, I would have to say that hopefully, just because Hulu might be owned by another parent company, and I think maybe we all know who that is, and no, it's not Disney, even though Disney has a deal with them. I think Hulu is also part of the Comcast family. I'm not really sure. But anyway, despite whoever the parent company is, with Hulu being primarily a streaming service, and from what we've seen streaming services be able to get away with, at times, I have a strong confidence that we're going to get an Animaniacs that's going to stay true to the spirit of the original, but it's also going to exceed the expectations that fans are hoping for. It's going to exceed in a way that if you thought the original series was funny and groundbreaking and became a phenomenon, then this new take on them is probably going to go beyond that. And I cannot wait to see that possibly happen. I mean, from the stories that have been told, there have been ideas tossed around for characters that never saw the light of day, and now we're going to probably be able to see some of those kind of ideas come to light. But the question is, who and what characters, I should say, are going to get that opportunity? Well, one character I think most definitely that needs to get the opportunity is a character that only had 2 shorts dedicated to her, and then she became more along the lines of a secondary background character. But she became so popular in her appearance, either it was in her own shorts, in the background as a secondary character, whatever, that when she got some solo stories in the comic books published by DC, fans bought those issues and bought and sold out those issues. And the character I'm talking about is Minerva Mink. The question is, will they get Julie Brown to come back and voice her? That's another story. But I think Minerva is a character that really had the ball dropped on her, mostly due to the fact that she was viewed as being over-sexualized for a children's character and show. As far as a children's character in a show primarily targeted at children goes. So I see the fact that the people that will probably be behind the new take on Animaniacs, or this new soft reboot or whatever, are going. A portion of them, if not a majority of them, are going to be basically the fans that grew up on the show, and they're going to probably realize, okay, this character got limited because of the way she was presented. We're going to fix that. But what can they do with Minerva that has not yet been done? And what could they bring back as a character trait that fans would, find familiar and funny with her, or find wacky about her? Well, we know that if they're going to bring Minerva back, that obviously one of the things they got to keep, about Minerva, one of the things they got to keep about her is her attraction to these handsome characters, these handsome male characters. And they just have to keep that essence about her getting all wacky and out of control, very Tex Avery-like, if you will, and where she has some moments. I mean, if they want a good example of what they can do with this character, all they have to do is just look at at her 2 shorts that she had, Moon Over Minerva and Meet Minerva. Just see her reaction when she sees the werewolf version of Wilford in Moon Over Minerva, and then her reaction to her best friend's cousin at the end of Meet Minerva. And you'll kind of get a good idea of what traits they could keep. I mean, personally, I think they're going to keep the traits of her melting into a puddle, and whether or not they keep it to the point to where she can reform herself like she did in Meet Minerva, or it takes a character to pick her up and wring her out like a towel, or scoop her up in a cup or something like that, or whatever, and kind of restore her by wringing her out like a wet towel, or pouring her down out of the cup or whatever. I think those are traits they need to keep. I mean, honestly, I mentioned this before. I think one of the things they could do to not only keep that trait as a part of Minerva, but I think they could also, as I mentioned, probably give it a new twist. And I think one of the new twists I believe they could do, to add to her silliness and her wackiness, is when she does that, after she melts, you have her seep into the ground, and then you have this big flower just pop out of nowhere and, just start growing out of the ground. And you have these petals, this kind of rose petals just pop open, and there she is sliding out of the rose petal, completely restored. Or you have her, like I say, you have her melt and she seeps into the ground, and this flower pops up, just grows out of it instantly where she melted and seeped into the ground at, and all of a sudden this flower grows out of the ground, and when the petals open, you see her face right there in the middle, because she's become a flower, and she has to get restored after that or something, or whatever, or she gets restored after that. So you could do that. Heck, you can even take it a step further where she does that, and you have this little meadow of flowers just grow, and you see nothing but little Minerva faces on the flowers. Hours before you see this big flower, like I said, pop out of nowhere, and suddenly it opens up and out slides Minerva or something like that. That could be, like I say, a new twist on her doing the melting gag, or the lustful melt gag as it's called by TV tropes. That's a new twist that they could add to her repertoire. You can even add a new twist to where she inflates like a balloon, like in Moon over Minerva. Her head inflated like a balloon where it popped off, and she had to grab it before it floated away. You could do that to where she gets inflated so much, or something like that, all of a sudden. Well, her heart basically, they could do a new take on that too, where her heart beats to the point where she starts to. It's not just her head, but her whole body starts to inflate, and all of a sudden you hear this big old boom, and she just pops into tiny little Minervas, and then forms back together. And that would be interesting. That would be a new take. But Minerva's not the only character that's going to get a fresh new coat of paint as well, or a makeover. Slappy Squirrel, I think, is a character that really, if given more opportunities than what... the character was given a lot of opportunities to shine along with her nephew and her cast of characters, but there was so much more they could have done with her. So much more. And I think, honestly, they are on the border of doing so much with this character. So much. We saw that basically characters her age, when they get older, still have the abilities to pull out a little bit of wackiness or a little bit of that Looney Tunes power that they have. And to me, we saw an example of that when one of Slappy's close friends, who played the mom of the Bambi parody character, even at her old age, was able to turn back into that character. So I think they kind of gave us an idea of what Slappy could probably do. Like maybe if her friend can do that, so can Slappy, even if it's temporary. So anyway, there's so much potential they could have done. So much more. So much. And heck, they do parrot. Heck, you have Rita and Runt. There were times when I'll be honest with you, when they did that short with Rita and Runt in Egypt, and Rita got chosen by Cleopatra to be the royal cat, she sang that song. There were times I'm thinking, what is she going to do? Melt through that? What is she going to do? She wraps herself up in the blanket like a mummy, and what's going to happen next? All of a sudden, that sheet's just going to pull down onto the bed, and next thing we know, we're going to see a melted version of Rita just seep out of it with her face singing, as a complete puddle. Honestly, I wouldn't have put it past them if they would have done that. But Rita and Runt, to me, just like Slappy, they had their share, but there's so much more that could have been done. And I think they were just they were on the tip of the iceberg of what they could have done with these characters. And I think if Rita and Runt brushed off and they're brought back, there's so much more, especially today's world, you could do with these characters. So much more. As far as today's environment, the music genre, if you will, there's so much more they can do. And I hope they give them that opportunity. Same with the Good Feathers. Same with Katie Kaboom. Can you imagine what they do with Katie Kaboom? Oh my gosh. The list is endless. Imagine the fun they could have with the Good Feathers. Again, the list just goes on. And then the Warner siblings themselves. I don't think we have to say any more than what we already know, right? Of what they've done, the parodies they've been part of, the educational parts, the edutainment as people call it, parts that they put in the shows. So can you imagine that it's going to be what? It's going to be like, 26 years? 26 years, almost 25 years. Well, it's 25 years this year, but since the series debuted. But can you imagine that in that 25 years, what they could bring to the table parody-wise, of what they can parody, what they can satire? We saw them satire and parody the Power Rangers. Imagine what they can do nowadays with a lot of stuff we've seen. Imagine them doing a parody of Frozen, of Disney's Frozen. The possibilities when it comes to the Warner siblings themselves are endless. But all we have to do is wait and wonder how they're going to approach it. Because like I said earlier, a majority of the staff that will probably be working on it are going to be people that grew up on the series originally and are going to hopefully be using the ideas that they came up with to kind of not only give these characters a new fresh coat of paint, but give them the opportunities that they were never really truly given because of the limitations of broadcast network television. But here's to hoping what we get with Animaniacs in 2020. Let me know what you guys are hoping for down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on what you think could happen with the characters I've mentioned. What new tricks of the trade do you think they could be given? And what old traits do you think they should be, they should keep and maybe mix together with some new tricks as well? But let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on it. And I'll talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care.